Hey, welcome back. An atelier is a funny place. A bunch of guys get together and they're trying to get the information that their, quote, master has to offer. I have one of those. And we find ourselves in this position where students feel like they're not making enough progress. The general approach to an atelier that I've taken over the many years may be changing because of it. So, what I've typically done is just what was done with me, with R.H. Ives Gammell, was, in fact, with anybody I've studied with, was just information was given and you take it or leave it. And it's your funeral, was a quote that Gammell used to use. Um, and I certainly took it and worked hard on it, with it, and all that sort of stuff. But there's a conversation in the studio that suggests that something more is needed, and it's in the class of something like a a disciplined program. We've always had a program. We've always had a program that looks like you draw cast, the classical stuff. You draw cast, you paint still lifes, and it goes on and on and on through portrait and figure painting, landscape, things like that. And but it's a pretty standardized program. But I'm going to just what I'm going to do on behalf of my students who've actually brought this up just lately. I'm doing this video for them, and really for you though to share. And I'd love to see some feedback from people on the subject. But before I start, I'm going to thank Nancy D for your recurring and very generous contribution, Nancy. Thank you, thank you, thank you so very much. Before I start, I'm going to give you a quote that I found. I was looking up the question of talent, quotes about talent. We all know that there's a book called Talent is Overrated, and there's all kinds of stuff associated. The conversation's a really interesting one, Talent is nothing. Gammell used to say talent's just a lubricant. But in looking that up, I wound up with this quote from Harakumi. Is it her? Well, we'll find out his name. I better do that now. It's not quite right, is it? What is his name? Haruki Murakami. Okay. I'd never heard of him before. He wrote something called The Norwegian Wood, which was recommended by, or in some way, by one of my former students. How you doing, Blake? And I'm going to just read it because it fills in this thing. And by the way, part of the reason I read these things is because I know people want to listen to these things online frequently. Right, Rick? And undoubtedly others. So here he goes. He said, I know I have a pretty good sense for music, but she was better than me. I used to think it was such a waste. I thought, if only she'd started out with a good teacher and gotten the proper training, she'd be so much further along. But I was wrong about that. She was not the kind of child who could stand proper training. There just happened to be people like that. They're blessed with this marvelous talent, but they can't make the effort to systematize it. They end up squandering it in little bits and pieces. I've seen my share of people like that. At first you think they're amazing, like they can't sight read some terrifically difficult piece. They can sight read some terrifically difficult piece and do a damn good job playing it all the way through. You see them do it, and you're overwhelmed. You think, I could never do that in a million years. But that's as far as they go. They can't take it any further, and why not? Because they won't put in the effort. Because they haven't had the discipline pounded into them. They've been spoiled. They've just enough talent, so they've been able to play things well without any effort, and they've had people telling them how great they are from the time they're little. So hard work looks stupid to them. They'll take some piece another kid has to work on for 3 weeks and polish it off in half the time. So the teacher figures they put enough into it and lets them go to the next thing. And they do that in half the time and go on to the next piece. They never find out what it means to be hammered by the teacher. They lose out on a certain element required or character building. It's a tragedy. And which brings up a question. So there it is, Haruki Murakami. It's so similar to what was being said by by Suzuki. He said, give me a mediocre talent in 10 years and I'll give you a genius. But it's that, mastery is not a product. It is not a talent thing. Mastery, implies a whole ton more than that. So let's go on. So what I'm going to offer my students who are asking me, they seem to be suggesting that they need some hammering. I hope you agree with me, guys who are talking this way. I've never thought of myself as the hammerer. But, I think we all have that in us if that's what somebody is engaged in. And what I have right now around me is a handful of guys. My daughter-in-law tells me women are different, and 80% of the people I've taught are women. I don't recall ever having to hammer a woman to get her to, maximize, to get her to get the information and to work with it. Certainly not the top ones that I've worked with. So what I did, what I began to do is I thought to myself, well, this is my opportunity. I'm going away for a month and a half. I'm going to be in London with all my friends there with this intensive and workshop, and I'm going to be calling on these guys to play a game with me, to work for 4 to 6 weeks, the way I'm going to lay out that they work for me. And so I'm just going to show you the schedule and talk a little bit about parts of it, okay? I mean to do that with those guys, by the way, tomorrow night, which will be 2 nights earlier than this when you get this. Will have been Tuesday. You're getting this on Thursday. So scheduled requirements in my absence. I need 2 solid cast drawings done in charcoal. Now, the reason I'm saying that is because some of my people have been reluctant to do serious cast drawings. Some of them have done some and are working on them now, and some of them have done the requirements from way back, just saw it in their best interest to do what was obviously laid out for them to do when they first arrived. But there's a lot of resistance to that for some people. So the first thing I would require is that everybody have done this. So in the next 2 months, whatever it is, month and a half, I expect to see 2 solid cast drawings, something that would look better than this, okay? This is an unfinished one. I expect them to be finished, the whole thing covered one side to the next. But a cast drawing from the antique, okay? It's a standard policy for most guys. It's a very important thing for people to understand light on an object. It's important to introduce yourself to some great art. Actually, copying the antiques should not be underrated. Or should I say, could not be overrated. And what they have to do is they have to get someone to come into the room and give them a fresh eye. Okay? That's come in the room, invite somebody to come over and have them tell you what they think is off, most off in their picture, and then get out of there. Okay? These first 2 are just in the class of this kind of stuff for this particular event. The rest of them are going to be stuff I'm going to call the disciplines. They're just the general things you really need to be doing on a consistent basis, okay? But if we can get that, my theory here is if we can get that going for 1 month, for 30 days, the second part, these habits are going to be built in. It's pretty typical of habits, actually. They can be built in 30 days. You have to work on them every day for 30 days. So we'll talk about that just a second. So if and when finished with that, set up and paint an 18 by 24 minimum size, life-size still life. No little ones, no studies, a full-size still life. And which is preceded by a full-size brown drawing on which you use strips of brown paper to search out the composition, to study it, to try this one, try that one. And you get the exquisite balance, the most expressive proportions and scale. And then if you have time, I'm expecting maybe a landscape or 2 and 11 by 14 size this time. They've been doing studies, but I want them to go out and do larger ones that take more time. But I want them to send me a 5 by 7 study first so I can look at it with them and talk composition. Okay. The rest of the stuff, as I said, is going to be stuff that I found is what gave me legs, okay? Doing it daily quality memory study of no more than 30 minutes. Okay, it doesn't take more than 30 minutes, sometimes 20, sometimes even less. I was eventually doing them in only 10 minutes. Quality memory studies. I'm not showing you those. You've seen them before. You can go to my videos about them. The second one is daily journaling. Gammell required that. One of the first things he told you is, I want you at the end of every day to sit down and write about the day, what you learned, the quotes, whatever it is that's passing through your mind. There's a lot. I mentioned things, journaling your day, your work, what you're reading, any thoughts, and minimum of a half page of writing. I've just been reading Delacroix's journals. It's a good place to go and look and see what journaling might look like. I did it primarily focused on painting. I wrote stuff that I'd learned about painting, and it was quite good stuff. And in the end, I found that was really nice to have those quotes written down with my 40-year earlier hand or 20-year earlier in that penmanship. It was nice to see those quotes. Sometimes you lose the precision of the quote. You remember it, but it's very nice to have it come back in exactly the wording that you recalled right there on the spot. Now, 20 minutes of stillness discipline. I don't know how many people know how to do that. I just close my eyes and look ahead, leaving my arm hanging by my side, and I become aware of the nothingness in my eyes, in my mind, whatever, and my hand. I'm aware of my hand. And eventually, not very long, especially depending on what you're dealing with, shall we say, at home or whatever, thoughts will crowd out your quietness. And I'm recommending you, this is a Roy Masters thing if you want to know. But I'm recommending that you'll notice that you can remember your hand, which will bring you back into your looking out of that part of your mind, and returning to stillness. Eventually, you'll find yourself breathing like some of these exercises. I don't recommend any of the stuff that's attached to anybody's religion or anything like that. But stillness is what we need, and the separation from your thoughts is a kind of a key thing in painting. It'll create an enormous sense of self-awareness, and we need that when you're trying to paint, okay? These are long-term disciplines. Now, one of the things I mentioned is 2 all-inclusive social events for team building. We've been having struggles a little bit in the studio with the individuals, some individuals who don't get along. Some think others are drags, others think the same of them. But I'm looking to have 2, for you guys out there, to hold parties, I don't care, picnics, go fishing, I don't care, get all of your, go boating up the Connecticut River, down it. Do something like take a hike together. But do 2 of those. This is team building stuff. You see it in the Caitlin Clark, it's the sports world, college, professional sports. I need you to do that. If you're in a group with other people, it's huge that you don't just live in your shell and malassociate or non-associate, right? It's important you get to know the people you're near, and it's important that you see them in the different kinds of varieties of environments. One thing I require, I've asked of all my students, and I've asked them, in a sense of insisting on it. But I mean, I was so gifted in the way when I was a student of being close to multiple museums. When I was in New York City, I could walk to the Met. I think it was a 45-minute walk, which I usually did walk. And then, or the Brooklyn where you had to take a subway, but or the Hispanic Society, we definitely had to take a subway, or the Frick, which you could walk to, or the Morgan Library. I mean, there were so many nice places. I'd have to say I was spoiled. I was in one minimally probably every single week, and I was in them a lot more in the earliest part of that. It was those were the days down at those museums, where you could give them a nickel. I came so often, I knew I was giving them full pay if I just gave them that much. It certainly was a nice thing for students without money to fall back on. These days it's sometimes tougher, but 2 visits to major museums from up here, I'm asking that of my guys. You need to go to the Met and the Brooklyn on one trip. You need to go to the Frick and the Hispanic Society for another one. That's what I'm asking. This is the requirement, okay? You have to do this, okay? Later, the Fogg, the MFA, the Gardner, the Worcester, the Hartford, and the Clark, they're all important. It doesn't really matter which order you do them in, but those are the big museums. There's too many in the Brooklyn, too many important works and artists represented to miss them out, to have missed out on them. Okay. Now, one thing. Now, these are a little bit in random order the way I typically do stuff. So, maximizing no more than 1 hour per day online. They say we're losing hours and hours of all of us have in this news cycle event of life right now. I mean, you could stay on there for 5 or 6 hours a day and still not feel like you've caught up on all the information. But I would even really truly recommend that you only get online once a week. Maybe on your day off, which I'm recommending. If you see the bottom one on this page, 1 day off per week. Take a day off. You need to breathe, especially if you're really working in a disciplined fashion. I read 2 books from the first 3 sections of our reading list, but if you haven't read Leonardo's treatise on painting, start there. Okay. Reading is hugely important. Reading is the other leg you need. You got my conversation. You got me quoting a bunch of guys. You have my work. You have your own work. You have each other's conversation, whatever else you find. But the masters, the conversation of the masters is one of these important stabilizers. You need to have your head around what they've said. Don't recommend reading anything else, just that. Just find quotes. Stories about them, if they're written by other painters, are often useful. But otherwise, writing by painters about painting, Shop Talk of Edgar Degas by R.H. Ives Gammell, which I showed you last week. It's still sitting here. A half hour of walking or running. You need exercise. Half hour of walking or running per day, or the equivalent. A lot of you guys do that anyway now. If your work, and most of you guys are working jobs, if your work has that built into it, then obviously it doesn't even apply. 2 hours per week, improving the building you're in. I own a courthouse building, and my guys are working there. And it matters that the place is kept up. I can't afford, I mean, literally, I own a building that I couldn't possibly keep up without charging people using a lot of money. So I just have the people in the building do the work. And it matters that they all do it and take turns doing it and all that sort of stuff, which gets back to keeping the studios, your living spaces, and the common areas clean and neat in a conscientious way so that it never looks dirty in there. And then to keep a record of that activity, of your own. Keep a record of your own. It could be part of your journaling. Wouldn't matter. And then I'm asking them to write, to email to me every day a weekly report. Okay. I've had one student do that. 2 of them have actually started, and it's amazing. They're saying it's amazing how much that helps them. It makes them honest, makes them objectively, helps them objectify their experience, and we can fool ourselves. We're getting something done, wishful thinking. So for the rest of you, though, those of you who are out there and listening to this would just give you some sense of what if you said to me, I'm going to be your student. I'm going to submit to what you tell me to do. This is what you'd be doing. This is what I'd be hoping and expecting for you to do minimally. And then these will evolve into other things that will be in the class of things to persist in doing. Okay. I have to make this one this short. I'm out of here. Mr. Producer needs this like yesterday. So we're all on our way over to London in 2 days. So by the time you're seeing this, I should be sitting in London, having a lovely time. If you know of anybody who wants to be part of our composition class, I do a composition in the evenings once a week, composition class, and I will include outsiders who are not part of the intensive workshop that we're doing. So if anybody in London hears this, wants to participate, be in touch. I think if you do the same thing, just go through studio.ingbretson.com. I'm quite sure there's something there. Mr. Producer maybe can put something up now. All right. That's what I've got for you today. Oh, I wanted to show you a picture, one picture, just because we did look at pictures, um, but I wanted to thank Nancy D again. Nancy, thank you so much. Let's end with a couple pictures. This is the kind of still life I'd be expecting from you. And I meant to show that when I was talking about them. Do a still life. It doesn't have to be a complicated one. In fact, probably better if it isn't, but it has to be one that's rather a lot of fun to look at. So you're always trying to get a good color scheme and find the and make and really make a delightful center of interest minimally, right? And then paint it from cover to cover and do it. This is the most beautiful job you can do, painting these still lifes. This is one by me from maybe, I don't know, maybe 8 years ago or something like that. Little tribute to you've seen it before. It's a little tribute to the world of Vermeer. But just that's all I'm looking for. Something of a still life with a you know. And we need to push it. We need to do the most beautiful job you know how to do. I really am aiming in this whole thing to try to get to a point with my student body so that we can have a show at the end of a year. In fact, I'm trying to get my guys to get enough still lifes together for us to have a local show in November, which I hope we'll travel around to several places here. Probably first in the area, just for my students to get used to what that is, to have shows on pictures on the wall, to frame pictures, and then to see them on the wall. So, all right, I'm out of here, Mr. Producer. I thought I'd do that in less than 20. I didn't do that. All right. All right, for you all, I wish you well. I'll still be probably trying to reach you from London, so our next couple episodes or whatever we call these things. What do you call those things? Anyway, we'll be presumably London-based. So I hope you all have a good week and enjoy improving your little careers or your big careers, hopefully. All right, take care now.